Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we are bringing in Chance Strickland. How you doing, Chance?
Doing swell. How about you, Jason?
I'm I'm also doing swell. I'm super happy to have you on the show. It is the first time you've been on the show, but I feel like I've already learned a lot from you. So I'm really pleased to be able to bring all my friends in the chat in and learn from you again. So for folks who aren't familiar with you and your work, do you want to give us a bit of a background?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been playing this dev game for several years now, and I sort of got my start working in agencies, slinging WordPress sites and agencies, and did that for several years. Went off and did my own thing, contracting for a while, and kind of stuck with that. And then I learned about this cool little tool called React, and I sort of took off in the JavaScript ecosystem ever since. And that's what I've been chasing after and focused on. And in I don't know, what was it, like 3-4 years ago now, I started working with Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson, who ran React training at the time. We started doing, I was working on Reach UI full time, which is a
Right.
accessibility focused library, React library. And then I started doing trainings with them and leading trainings and teaching teams how to use React effectively. And that was all well and good until, let's see, pandemics. And then we had one of those. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it kind of changed a lot of stuff. And so
Sure.
React training, we did a lot of in-person stuff that had to kind of stop. So I went and worked with a team from there called Modules, which is
Right.
building a visual editor for the web. You're doing great work over there. And we worked on a library called Radix UI, which is actually very similar to Reach UI in a lot of ways, but like expanded scope, and they just had more resources to really hone in on some of the components we built. So it was really cool, and it's a great library. Highly recommend folks check it out if you're not already familiar with it. Radix UI is awesome, and those folks are awesome. So really love the modules gang. And then I started working with Michael and Ryan again not too long ago, and they started building Remix. So I've been working on Remix, the lovely new React framework that is all of the rage with the kids these days. We can talk more about Remix, but yeah, remix.run, check it out if you haven't already. But I think it's great. I think it'll help you build better websites. And yeah, that's what I'm up to these days.
Yeah, we've got a couple episodes on Remix, and so we're talking today about esbuild, and the reason that we're talking about esbuild is because that's what's powering Remix, right? That's the build step for Remix. Is that right?
That's our compiler, yeah. So all the
Gotcha.
JavaScript you write in Remix is compiled by esbuild. We actually create two builds. We create a client build and a server build, but esbuild is responsible for both of those.
Nice. And so that kind of sent you down a rabbit hole, I imagine, because building anything like that is always challenging, but especially when you're working on it as a, when you got a framework, frameworks have to be flexible, not just for like solving an individual problem. Like if I'm building something at work, I'm trying to solve my team's problem. When you're building a framework, you're
Sure.
trying to solve a community's problem. And those are very shapeshifty sorts of things. So how did you find yourself in the ES build extending game?
Yes, that's an interesting question because I knew nothing about compilers at all. So I kind of I found myself in the ES build gang by really pushing hard on Remix supporting various CSS styling solutions that would require a compiler. One of which is CSS modules, which I'm still working on. We've been working on it for a while, and it's something I really hope to get in fairly soon. But that requires a build step because when you import a CSS module, it's not JavaScript, right? Like, so the compiler
Right.
needs to know what to do with that import, right? It doesn't just give you a JavaScript thing. You have to do something with it. And in relation to Remix sites, what you have to do is process the CSS. There's a lot of CSS module syntax that's going to change. You have to process the class names so that they're hashed. And so,
Can y'all hear
yeah,
this jet flying over my house right now?
I did hear the jet. I wasn't sure what that was all about, but
Sorry, everyone. I think there's an air show in Portland today, so there's a lot of A lot going on out there. I don't know what it is. Sorry about that. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. And for the listener at home, I think Jason literally got off a plane like 20 minutes ago or something and jumped right onto stream. So any excess noises are not his fault. It's we're doing it live, as they say. ESbuild is responsible for taking all of those imports and making sense of them and trying to do something with them. So I started working on this plugin, sort of dove deep on ESbuild and compilers in general. Learned a lot, and learned how to write some plugins, and excited to talk about it because ESbuild is really cool.
Yeah, so I feel like ESbuild sort of it kind of exploded onto the scene where it was like everything was, there was only Webpack, like the whole world was Webpack, and then all of a sudden ESbuild came out and it like blew the world open. I feel like we started seeing a lot of innovation in the space again. And I don't think ESbuild may not have even been the first, because there was like SWC, there was Parcel, there were a few that just started exploring like, what does it look like to bundle without Webpack? But ESbuild just came in and was like so fast that it's kind of startling. And the first time I used it, I thought it was broken because I was like, well, there's no way, right? But one of the reasons that ESbuild is so fast is that it does a whole lot less than what Webpack is trying to do out of the box, right? Like ESbuild is bundling ES modules, and it can do that very, very quickly. Webpack is like transpiling, it's running Babel, it's running all these custom extensions and plugins and various transforms. So, you know, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but it was really interesting to see how much ESbuild changed the game for innovation. I feel like it opened the door for a lot of these new frameworks and meta frameworks that we're seeing, because all of a sudden there was a new way to solve a problem. And so the legacy frameworks like the Next and the Gatsby's and you know, these ones that are kind of loaded up with a lot of things that were pre this new wave of innovation. There was a room for like,
I just want to say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to say how I love how you called technologies that are like 2 or 3 years old max legacy. It always cracks me up when we talk about anything in the JavaScript ecosystem, because as soon as it turns like a year old, it's like, oh, that's stale. What are we going to do next? I should probably use a different word, but it just feels like, you know, the pace of the development is just so like it's moving, right? And so things get really, it's very wild. I think I'm clipping, and all right, y'all. So I'll come clean with you. I have been out of town. I got in last night and I have not set up my office yet. So I like have my computer, but I like plugged things in right before the stream, and I'm pretty sure that something in my audio chain is not quite right yet. So I apologize for the crackling. If it gets really distracting, let me know and I'll switch to the MacBook Pro mic. And it'll be a little roomier, but it won't have the, I think I'm clipping. I think I'm too hot right now. So I will get that fixed, but I can't fix it right now without unplugging things. So I apologize for that. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, I know that we're going to do a little bit of a faster episode today. We're trying to get done within an hour, right? So we've got about 40 minutes between now and when we're going to call this thing done. No, 50 minutes. 50. So I think we're doing it right. Yeah.
I think we can do it. So let's talk a little bit about what the goal is here, right? Like, when would you want to extend ESbuild? You mentioned CSS modules as being one case, but like, where would somebody else find themselves needing to extend ESbuild?
Sure. So essentially, if you have any sort of not JavaScript in your JavaScript, right? So like, which is really common for us these days. We got JSX and React now. Now ESbuild does handle JSX for us by default, which is great. But pretty much anything else, like you said, it's very hands off, which allows it to be super fast, which is great. I like to tell people, go run some code with ESbuild and then go run some code with Webpack and just take a look at the output. And they're radically different. So that should tell you how much one is doing versus how much the other is doing. So ESbuild is very hands-off in a lot of ways, but we do rely on a lot of not technically JavaScript in our JavaScript code these days. So anytime you need to do anything, any sort of transformations with your imports or with any of the code you encounter, you are going to need to extend esbuild. So one quick caveat to that is that unlike Webpack and Rollup and Parcel, and a lot of, I don't even know about Parcel, but a lot of bundlers have plugins that allow you to sort of jump into the AST a little bit, right? An AST, for those who don't know, is abstract syntax tree, which is basically how it's kind of the base of the compiler. It's a data model that sort of takes our previous code and uses that information to transform it into code that runs the same way that we'd expect. So a lot of these tools in the past have let us reach into that AST to make transformations on individual nodes within the code. esbuild doesn't do that, at least not with JavaScript, the JavaScript API, because it's written in Go, not JavaScript. And that's also a big reason why it's so freaking fast. And if you allowed folks to jump in there in JavaScript land and start tinkering, that's going to dramatically start slowing down your process, and it's going to become a bottleneck. And so at least as of the moment, you're not going to be able to jump in and do individual transforms on like stuff within the code, right? If you wanted to do something like that, you would use a plugin to intercept the import and then take that import, read the file contents, and then manipulate the file however you want before you spit it back out. But just, one note on that limitation. There are trade-offs with esbuild as there are with any software. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's sort of that's sort of the case, I think, for extending esbuild.
Gotcha. And so the lack of ability to transform nodes is not impossible with esbuild. It's just that's when you would introduce a plugin. You need to build all of those transforms yourself, which is, if I remember correctly, that's kind of how Webpack started. And then really the game with Webpack was like, we can build transforms for everything. And over time, it just kind of became like, if you needed to change anything at all about your app, there was a Webpack transform for it. And a lot of frameworks started coming with those pre-baked in. And so everybody thought that Webpack just did all that stuff. But really, if you remember configuring Webpack and you weren't using Create Next App or something like that, it was a huge game of like, okay, you've got the bare Webpack config, and then you're going to import all of the different Babel transforms, and then you need your Webpack plugins and all these different things so that you could actually put it together. And it was, 15, 20, 30 different NPM packages at the end of the day to run these build processes. We just abstracted that away with Create React App or Next or Gatsby or whatever it was. And that's where that slowdown starts to come, because each of these things doesn't really, they don't work together. They're kind of working on a separate piece of work, and those aren't always happening in parallel. They're not always happening cleanly, right?
Most of the time you don't know what's happening, because most people like myself configure Webpack and then never look at it. Like that's kind of the MO with Webpack, is you get it to work exactly how you want, and then you shove it in a corner somewhere and you pray that you never have to go back and actually inspect anything in it. So that's my approach. So
yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, and this is sort of, I think this is what's been interesting is like, it felt like for the last 5 years or so, the name of the game was make it so that when we write JavaScript, it's possible to run that anywhere. And so the work that was done with Babel to get just universal compatibility, and the work that was done with Webpack to be able to do these transforms for different non-spec but very common things, like we have, our Webpack transforms for CSS and JS. We've got CSS modules. We've got Sass, Less, Stylus, whatever you want to use. All these different things come with plugins. But what we've also seen is that the browser has been advancing, and we've seen the community settle around ES modules. We're still coming to the end of that, where we're not quite 100% supported, but we've seen a lot of new browser APIs come up as well that eliminate some of what the stuff that was happening 5 years ago was needed for. We don't necessarily need as many of those tools. So, and when I call things legacy, that's kind of what I mean. They're there because we needed them before, but we don't really need them now. And esbuild feels a little bit like that. Okay, let's start with what's true today, and let's build a new layer on top of that so that we get the best possible starting point. And I think we're seeing a really good, I would just say like a refresh of how we build for modern tooling. But before I get too far off on a rabbit hole here, knowing like trying to be mindful of time, I want to make sure we've got plenty of time to build. So,
Yes.
did you have anything to add to my little rant before I jump us over into writing code?
Sure. I mean, real quick, I just want to make it clear. I'm not like hating on Webpack. Webpack did so much for us, and it still does so much for us. So many tools are still powered by it. I just learned the other day about the Module Federation. I think it's Module Federation
Right.
in Webpack, which is just bonkers. And I had no idea what it was for until literally 2 days ago, and just sort of changed my whole outlook of like the power of a low level tool like Webpack. So my biggest problem with Webpack is I just never took the time to learn how to use it. So, and if that's your approach to, which sometimes it just has to be, right? Like we have to build stuff and ship it. So you don't have time to learn the nuances of every single little thing. But yeah, all that to say, like I have no hate for Webpack. I have no hate for Rollup or any of these other tools. I just really love esbuild. I love that, to your point, it's been able to simplify so much because the language and the tooling around JavaScript has progressed so much in just a few short years. So
absolutely,
yeah, this is a pro esbuild, not an anti Webpack
situation. And I think the maybe a way to think about it too, just for anybody in the chat who was maybe getting the impression that we're hating on Webpack, that is it's more that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. Like
Absolutely.
jQuery normalized so much on the browser so that we could build something like Grunt and Gulp, which then gave us build systems so that we could build Webpack, which gave us all this new flexibility and new way of thinking about building so that we could build esbuild. Like it's the progression and evolution. It's not that one thing is bad. It's that things need to exist before other things can be built. And I think that we see that through a lot of web dev. So yeah, very, very much agree. This is not there's no hate here. This is just celebrating progress, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get into a little bit of coding here. So I'm gonna jump us over to the pair programming view, and I'm gonna do a shout out to our live captioning. We have Amanda with us today, taking down all these words. Thank you very much, Amanda. Amanda's coming over from White Coat Captioning, and that is made possible through the generous contributions of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, NX, and Backlight, all kicking in to make the show more accessible and just generally allow us to do cool things on Learn with Jason that I would never be able to do without that support. So head over to the homepage. You can check out the transcription there, as well as click on these sponsor links to learn more about them. We are talking to Chance today, so make sure you head over to Twitter and give him a follow. I know that you were hesitant to get more followers, but too bad. Everybody go follow him.
Yeah.
And we're talking today about esbuild. So esbuild is, you can see here, this is a comparison of build time. So what they're doing is running 10 copies of 3JS with default settings with minification and source maps. And esbuild is doing it in 0.3 seconds. Webpack is taking 41 seconds. Parcel is 32. You can see like the first time that I ran this, I was like, oh, that's broken. Right, because it happened so fast that you assume that no work was done, but it's a really stark difference in a very, like you said, it's built in Go. It's extremely efficient, extremely fast, but part of that is because it's a very limited API, which brings us to what we're going to do today, which is build a plugin. So, Chance, where should we start?
So let's start in the repo. So I'm going to pop a link in the chat. And now I'm getting that echo in your mic again. Sorry. And not the oh wait, hold on. I think it's gone again. I think you're good. All right. There's some magical devil sitting in your room, like throwing darts and just knocking your audio off today. But
it's killing me.
But yeah, so let's start at the repo. We got the repo open now. So this is just a quick little React app that I threw together that is bundled with esbuild. Very, very straightforward and simple. So let's go ahead, and I think you got that cloned locally. So we're going to start working with that. This is called the Booped with Jason app. So we all know how Jason loves his boops. If we can drop some boops in the stream here, that'd be awesome, because I don't know, I just love that little effect that you got going on when we fill the void with just endless boops.
That's right. Yeah, we fill that empty place in my heart with boops. Is really how that goes.
That's right. So yeah, there you are. We're getting the boops. Bring them on. So we're gonna clone the booped with Jason repo, and you got that opened up locally. And let's go ahead and run it. Run npm run dev, and you should be able to open up the URL that you see in your. Well, you have to install first. So did you install everything?
Okay, so let me open this up. Here's our VS Code, and then I'll use the terminal in VS Code from here on out. So let's run npm run.
Oh, so we would
dev.
need to have code.
Oh, npm run dev. Npm run dev. Okay, and see, it's so dang fast that let's see how long.
Basically instant, yeah.
Yeah, so fast it doesn't even tell me how long it took.
Yeah, I should have put a log on there to show you the time. It's probably like 10 milliseconds or something ridiculous. So anyway, here's our boop. We've got a couple pages. We've got a home page. We're ready for some boops. We have the boop page, which it just says, look at this little guy, but I don't see a little guy. So what are we going to do? Let's go back into our code. Take a look at in the source directory. We've got some pages here, and we're just using React Router. So let's take a look at the boop component. That's our boop route. So we've got a couple things in here. We're importing this thing called corgi from corgi.boop. What the heck is a .boop? Let's go up. Let's uncomment that really fast, and let's render that component. Let's uncomment the component there, and just save. And let's reload the page. See what happens. Well, nothing's going to happen because your app crashed. And why did your app crash? Because we have no idea on Earth what the heck corgi.boop even is or means, right? This is a weird little thing that we don't. What are we doing here? What is corgi.boop even giving us? Do you see a file called corgi.boop? I don't. So
let's see. I have it.
Found the boops folder. Yeah,
found a boops folder.
Open up corgi.json. Let's take a look at that guy. So we got a little data here. We've got the data object that looks like some data for an image, right? It's got a source URL and it's got an alt tag. So I think this is probably going to be useful to render an image with, perhaps. So let's say you've got some data coming from an outside source somewhere, and you wanted to find some way to import that data directly into your code as, say, a React component or some data, some transform data that you would use in your React components, right? So we could potentially create here what I would call, or I guess what the ecosystem would call, a virtual module, right? It's not a real file, but it's a module that represents something that can happen somewhere else in your system, right? We use virtual modules in the Remix compiler for a small handful of things. If you've not used Remix, we've got loaders, we've got action functions that you export from routes. We use plugins to basically extract a lot of the stuff that you would need on the server and run it only for the server build. And then extract things that you would run only on the client and use that only in the browser build. So esbuild is really powerful for this sort of thing, for manipulating imports and turning them into some other form of code that you can actually execute. So what I want to do here is I want to build a small esbuild plugin that's going to let us take this data and turn it into a React component. So if we go into our scripts directory, we should see a few scripts, just plain old Node scripts, and we've got this dev, we got build. So let's open up build. That's what we're interested in. So in our build, let's see, we got a couple things. We're calling the build directly if we're executing it from the root, but let's go down and take a look at the actual build function. So build is responsible. We've got some JavaScript. We've got some, I think below that, we've got a CSS builder, but I want to build JS. I want to take a look at our JavaScript builder. And that's a few lines down. Or you can just, use that guy. So build.js is essentially just calling esbuild. Esbuild's build function takes care. You've got an entry point, and just for reference, that entry point is relative to the directory from which you execute the script, so not this particular file. So since you're executing from the root, it's going to look in the source directory, and it's going to spit out an out file in public/dist/index.js, and that's the file that we're consuming in the browser. So if you actually look at that file, we talked earlier about sort of the simplicity of esbuild and its output. Like if you've ever seen a Webpack a compiled Webpack thing. Like you've got a lot of stuff happening, and this looks like there's a lot of stuff happening, but in fact, it's just this is all React, right? Like all of like React is a big library, and so like there's a lot of code, but it's still just like it's readable JavaScript, right? Like this is just JavaScript stuff. And it's very like if you parse it and you get through like this is React, I think there's some comments even that'll tell you like this is React and then this is so and so script, right? This is your entry point. But it's all just JavaScript. It's very readable JavaScript. It's not they're not doing anything fancy here. So yeah, there's React router. Yeah, there's our app code, right? Those are our transformed React components. We're just calling create element, right? We don't get JSX in our output. So that's what esbuild is really doing for you. It's just compiling it all down into a singular JavaScript file that we can consume in the browser. So we're sort of done with this file. Let's go back into our builder in our build script. And in our esbuild, we want to add a plugin. So right after out file, go ahead and add the plugins key. And we are going to pass it an array. And inside this array, we don't have it yet, but we're going to pass a function that's our esbuild plugin, right? So we want to go ahead and let's go and create a new plugin. Let's call it the boot plugin, and let's just do it in a new file just to so it's like a clean view, so we can focus on that. So
where does one keep like? Would you just put it in here as like a plugin?
Yeah. Throw it in scripts. Just call it like boot plugin or something, and you could create another directory for plugins if you want. We'll just do it here. So let's go. We'll need a few modules here because we're going to be working with the file system. So go ahead and remember we're working in Node right now. So this is common.js. So let's import the file system module FS as well as the path module. And let's declare, let's go ahead and declare a plugin. Call it like just make it a constant variable. We'll call it boot plugin, and it should be an object. So yeah, I said function, I think, but it's just going to be an object. And look at you got Copilot going on. It's telling you exactly what
Copilot. So killer.
What am I doing here? Just let Copilot write the code. Like this is I don't need to tell you anything. This is funny. I just installed Copilot yesterday, and it scared the crap out of me. I was like, I'm going to be out of a job in like a year if this thing keeps getting smarter because it's ridiculous. It's so good. Anyway. So yeah, that's what I would name your plugin. Actually, go ahead and hit tab and let that do the work. And look, it knows exactly what your next step is going to be. You're going to create an asynchronous function called build. It's the build key. It's an async function. It's going to take a config option. Good Lord, this is scary. All right. So inside of this function, let me see if Copilot knows what's next. Come on, Copilot.
Doesn't know. It doesn't know anything.
Oh, come on.
Look at it try now.
All right. No, don't worry about all that. It's actually, oh my gosh, it's actually giving you my code from the final branch, which tells you exactly what we're doing. Oh, is
it really?
Yeah, that's terrifying. It's looking at the other branches in Git and pulling that code out. Oh my gosh, that is wild. Anyway, let's ignore that for now. So we're going to do a couple things. Call config. I would actually call it, instead of config, let's rename that variable because that's confusing to me. What you get as the argument is not your config. It's actually the build itself. So just call it build. That is the, that's literally the build. And the function actually, I was wrong. I got too excited about Copilot. The function is called setup. So you're setting up your plugin, and what you get is the argument for that setup is the build itself, right?
Gotcha.
Build is an object. It's got a few properties, and the properties we'll talk about are essentially hooks. They're hooks into the process, right? So you've got a hook for onStart, which fires when esbuild starts the build process. I think some people get confused with the onStart. There's an onStart and an onEnd, and I think some people get a little confused because they think that onStart and onEnd. I got confused. I'm saying some people, like that's me. I thought onStart was when like
it's me. I am some people.
Yeah. I thought onStart was firing when we first encountered our first import in this plugin, and in fact, onStart and onEnd are triggered when the build itself starts and ends. Lesson to all you developers: read the docs, and you won't be confused like me. So you've got build.onStart, build.onEnd, and between those steps, we have We're actually not going to use onStart. I just wanted to talk about like these are the life cycles that you have available to you. We're going to call onResolve. And the first step that we need to take to handle this .boop import is we need to resolve the import somewhere because that file doesn't exist, right? We didn't have a .boop file, so we need to resolve it. We manipulate or use the resolver to manipulate the import into a file that does exist. We need to do something with that, right? So inside of onResolve, the first argument is a object. So it's like a config object. And by default, when you call onResolve, it's going to resolve literally every single import it ever sees in your app, which we don't need it to do. We only care about, for this plugin, the boops, right? We care about the .boops. So pass a filter key, and your filter is going to be a regex. And how do you verbally communicate a regex? I'm just going to assume you're real good at writing regexes and
fortunately, I do know enough about regex. I can handle this. So just tell me what you need to find.
So we're going to find any string that ends in .boop.
Okay, and is this like a glob regex or like a legit
just a legit regex? Yeah.
Okay.
So
let's go with
just like Copilot do it and change CSS to boop. There you go. Boom. There it is.
And we don't need it to be case sensitive.
Nope. That's just regular old any .boop. We won't worry about capital .boops. That's a user problem. So, and so we got the filter, and now we're going to pass a second argument to onResolve, which is our callback function. This is your second argument to onResolve. You're in keys right now, still of that object.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So pass just an asynchronous function. Yep, there you go. And inside, so we're going to get some arguments in that. So the argument, just say args. And what we're going to do in this async function is we're going to return a new object. And this object is going to instruct us what we need to do with that import, right? So we're going to pass it what is the key? I think it's path. So go ahead and pass it a path key. And the path is how we resolve this import, right? So we don't have a .boop file. So go ahead and say path.resolve. Just let this guy do it. Let Copilot, he knows what's up. So we need to resolve. So go ahead and say dear name _ dear name because we're backing out. We're currently in this scripts directory. So we need to go up a level and we need to go into the boops directory. Say boops. And then lastly, we're going to resolve the base name of the actual import that we said. So say call path.basename. We can back out and sort of
base name.
And inside of there, we're going to say args.path because the args.path is the original path name that we started with. And all we care about in that case is the base name because it's called corgi.json, right? So we're going to say path.base or path.basename args.path, and then we're going to say like plus JSON, right?
And so
replace.
Just to kind of do a quick understanding of how this would work, we do corgi.json or corgi.boop, and when you run path.basename, the base name is going to be corgi, right?
Yep.
Like it leaves out the extension, it leaves out the folders, all that.
Well, it doesn't leave out the extension. You would need a second argument for that. But instead of the second argument, we're just going to simplify it. So after the base name function, go ahead and just say .replace, and we'll replace it using the same regex. You can just .boop's fine, but I always like to be a little clearer there in case there's a .boop somewhere else. And say .json. There you go. And so that's exactly what we've done. We've just reconstructed this thing to resolve the path where the file that we're concerned with actually lives, right? And we're almost done here. The second key in our return object is going to be a namespace. So the namespace, so just so you know, when you're writing these plugins and these hooks, you can have multiple onResolve hooks in a single plugin. You have multiple onload hooks in a single plugin. You might want to do more than just transform your .boops. You might want to transform something else, and it's all related logic. So you just throw additional function calls in there to deal with those separately. And the namespace is what allows us to differentiate between those hooks. So the namespace, just call it like boop slash namespace. Doesn't really matter, but it just needs to be a unique identifier. So call it boop slash namespace. I think you can use slashes. Yeah, I think that's fine. So we're done with this hook. We have resolved our import. We know exactly where the file is, and we're done, right? But now we have this JSON file, and we don't actually want we don't want the JSON. We want to use that JSON to give us a component. Because remember, in that route, we were actually trying to render a component. So the next hook we're going to use is the onload hook. So go ahead and call build.onload. Hey, look, Copilot was actually wrong. I love that. It's not perfect after all.
Now it's trying to copy me. Look.
Now it's right. Yeah, now it's right, actually. So just tab.
Oh, it's the same?
Yeah, it's the same. So with one exception, go ahead and close that function off real quick. But one exception is in that the options object, we're going to pass an additional argument, and this one's called namespace. And we just use the same exact namespace here so that we know what to do. We're loading what we just resolved, right? So we resolved it here, and now we're going to load it down here. Again, if you have multiples of these things, this will be really important. So we're only concerned with loading files in this namespace. And now we're going to do some more work to tell us what to give us once we load this, this information. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to construct a React component. We are going to, so go ahead and call, actually, let's put this in a try catch because we're going to do some file system stuff and we might want to handle errors. We'll come back to the errors in a minute. And actually, let's just do the error. So in case we catch an error, all we want to do is we want to tell esbuild about that error. We don't want to crash our process.
Oh, we want to tell esbuild. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So just return an object here. And inside that object there, I think it takes a key called errors. Yeah, errors plural. It's an array. And just say another object. And then text. And yeah, I think it's just error.message, or I think that's what you're going to use. Whatever the error message is, just pass it along to the text here. And now we've got some error handling that won't completely destroy our build process, but it'll give it to esbuild and let esbuild spit it out for you. So,
gotcha. This is the built-in behavior for all of the hooks. Like if I return an object with an errors array, it'll pick that up and use it.
Yeah, you can pass whatever errors you want. You can pass multiple errors. Nice. You can customize. It's nice if you want to customize, like, hey, I know that I read the file system wrong. Instead of spitting out this whole nasty node error, I just say, hey, you back up in this plugin. We know exactly where it happened. Just a very human readable error message if you really wanted to. Like, we're not doing that here, but we could, you know. So it's useful for that, I think. So
cool.
The core logic here is we are going to take the path that we have resolved and we're going to turn it into a React component. So first we need to, since we're dealing with JSON, we need to parse the contents of that file. So go ahead and start a new variable, just call it JSON, and then call JSON.parse. And what we're going to parse is the result of the of reading the file system. So since this is async, let's go ahead and call await, or yeah, that's fine. Read it synchronous is fine. Doesn't matter. We're blocking either way. So pass in args.path because now we have, this is the path from our resolve hook, right? This is, we resolved it.
What we've done is we've set up a chain. So yes. Our script requests corgi.boop. esbuild says, what do I do with corgi.boop? And our plugin says, get corgi.json, which is now in this onload.
Yep, it just passed it along. It's already resolved it. So now args path is the resolve path that we already constructed up above. So we don't need to do that work twice. I think the encoding is default UTF-8, right? Like, I think so.
I think so. But why don't we drop it in anyway?
I always do it anyway, just because I don't memorize these things. And off of JSON, let's just destructure a couple things. We checked our JSON. Well, remember we had a source, an SRC, and we had an alt, right? That's what we got in that JSON file. So now we've got those things, and let's construct a template literal. We're going to create a React component. It's just a string, right? So go ahead and start a there you go, component. And inside that, we're going to just write a React component, say import. You do need to import React. So I know we're all used to React 17 telling us we don't have to import React anymore. I think there's a configuration option in esbuild to enforce that, but I didn't mess with it. So yeah, we got React imported. That's great. And now just export a default. Just say export default React function. Yeah, there you go. And
actually, I'll go simpler. We'll just do one of these.
Yep, and we're going to build an image. You don't even need to finish your, don't finish your, there you go. And there you go. You'll need your little dollar sign in front of those.
Right, because we're doing the.
Yeah, I'll need to. Well, you'll still need the, well, no, you won't, because those are going to be read as a string. You just need the quotes. There you go. Perfect. And that is pretty much it. You've got your content there, right? So now we have, we know what the content's supposed to look like. And this, so when we load something from this file, instead of the file itself, this is the content we're expecting, right? And
gotcha.
So now we're going to return an object, and that object is going to have a contents key, and the contents of this file. Yep, contents, and the contents is our component.
Okay.
And then we're going to have a loader. So the loader, there are several different built-in loaders. You can actually build your own loader, I believe, for esbuild, but there are built-in loaders which know how to handle certain data types differently. So in this case, we're loading JavaScript. We're actually loading JSX, right? So there's a difference here. So let's go ahead and say JSX. We'll use esbuild's built-in JSX loader, so it knows when it sees our JSX what to do with it. And we're also going to pass, in this case, a resolve directory. And that's because this is going to be resolving from the core. I think it's the boops folder, because that's where it's encountered all this, right? So it's gonna be resolving from there, but we actually want to resolve it from the root, because it's going to need to import React from our root node modules. So go ahead and say, it's actually, I think it's the parent dir name, right? Like we need to go up a path, because right now we're in.
Oh yeah. So we need like what is
path
dot
resolve or join. I think it doesn't matter in this case.
Is it CWD?
Yeah, that's fine too. Just go ahead and do that. Guess just where we're calling it from is fine.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry, not path. It's process.cwd.
Process. Yeah. Okay. I was like, why does this look wrong to me? Okay. Good. Good.
Okay. So that's your root, and I think we're done. So go ahead and save that, and then go back in your build. Let's go ahead and import this plugin.
Okay, so I'm going to const boop.
Did you actually did we export it? I don't think we exported it. So
we didn't. No. So wow. Jeez.
No,
okay.
So that we're in common JS, remember? So you're gonna have to do module.exports here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So now we can import it in our build. So require. I think we just it's the default actually, because I think we just module.exports will give you that we don't have to destruct.
Module.exports is default.
Yeah.
Man, I have not written common JS in a while.
I know. Every time I do it, I have to think twice about everything. So all right, cool. So now we're just gonna pop that into our plugins. There you go.
Like that?
Yeah. And as long as I didn't goof up on any of the instructions, I think if you restart your server, it might have restarted already. It did not. So if it's a crash, you'll have to restart it.
Wait, still doesn't like it. I've done something wrong. Do not know how to load path, boop, namespace, corgi.json.
Keep going. What do we do wrong? Let me see here. Let's go back and inspect some stuff. So it doesn't know how to load. So we built a loader. So go back to our, let me go ahead and take a look at that loader again. Our onload. We're filtering correctly. That's what we should do. We're namespacing correctly. That's what we should do. I don't know if the slash is allowed in esbuild. Let's just change that to a dash just out of, I have no idea if this will make a difference actually, but let's try it because I always use dashes. Yeah, that just makes me feel better. So we got our arguments. We are getting our JSON. Let's double check, make sure we got that file path right. It should give us a more specific error though, because we're definitely resolving it. So we're resolving from the current directory. We're going up a directory, which is what we want because we're in the scripts directory now. We want to go back to the root. Yeah, when in doubt, log everything. Sometimes sometimes it'll fail before you try to log anything.
Oops.
Though. So I'm
Corgi JSON.
Yeah.
So that's correct.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there it is. I can click right into it.
Yep. So we definitely know that's right. So keep going down. Let's keep playing with it.
Okay.
That's
so we get it resolved. So then we get into the loader. And once we get into the loader, we're trying to read our file sync. So let's console log our source and alt.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it didn't fail on the read file, which I don't know why it would, because that file should exist. Go back up and actually log the file, just to make sure for some reason that we did something wrong in our namespace. Like right above there, the args, just log args.path. Anybody in the chat knows what we're doing wrong, please tell me, because this was not on my list of things to debug. We didn't even get a weird, so it's not even getting called. Why is it not getting called? Did we call it build.onload? Did we name it right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're even encountering our loader, which is odd to me.
We're not.
Oh, it's the only reason we.
Did I screw up the name? Is it onload?
Like no, that's right. In the boop filter, I believe is right. We didn't have any typos there. Namespace.
It's a .json now. So should the filter be for dot?
Oh, yes, you're right. Oh, I totally didn't think about that. And this is what happens when you let autopilot or Copilot do literally everything. You just get sloppy. So yeah, so actually, let's just out of laziness here, because we don't want to do this with every JSON file. I don't want to do it to the things that used to be boops. Just call it corgi.json. Just a straight, corgi.json. Like, yeah, there you go. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm lazy, but in reality, you would probably want to, up in your resolve hook, name it something specific with a key or something that you could recognize down there in your filter. But I think that's it. Good eye on that one.
Okay, right, so now boot plugin was triggered, but something else has gone wrong. Build.onload error came from the onload, and it was invalid option from onload. Call back in plugin resolve.
Process.cwd.
Oh, apparently we can't use process.
Huh. I wonder
CWD.
why.
So whatever. So how did you do it? So that
I just constructed the path. So the same way I did it up above when we constructed the root directory. So just say path.resolve dir name, and then go up one.
That's all.
That should work. I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
so
gosh,
it's still unhappy, but I
was not prepared for all of these problems.
It's all right. This is the best part of the show, is when we have no idea what's going on and then we go and fix it. Okay, so now it doesn't like new error text summary, which means
that's an internal esbuild error. So what is that?
Invalid option. It doesn't like resolve as an option. Is it resolver?
Oh, resolve. Yeah, sorry. It was resolve dir. So capital DIR. There you go. Yeah.
Yo.
There we go. Oh my gosh, I was sweating there for a second. I'm not good at spelling typos. So let's go ahead and click on boop. Look at this little guy. We rendered an image, which is as a React component. It just has that data in there. So this is obviously this is a little silly, but it's very fun. That's why we do silly things. But it's a real it is a real use case for building an esbuild plugin. You have some data somewhere. You want to do something with it in your JavaScript that isn't normal JavaScript. And so we take that data, we manipulate it, we resolve the path, and we build a component out of it. And there's, like I said, there's lots of loaders that you get in esbuild, like in the CSS modules plugin we're building. We've got a loader for both the JSON, which is the class name map to the original CSS module class name, and the hash class name. But we also have a CSS file that we need access to. So we use the file loader for that. So there's different loaders that give you different pieces of data. and you can do different things with them. So in a nutshell, that's how you build an esbuild plugin.
I mean, and this is what's really exciting about this is like, you know, what we did is it was probably firmly in the proof of concept camp, but
Absolutely.
you can imagine like there are some really interesting things that you could do with this. I know, for example, that I have spent a lot of time writing out YAML files or JSON files where we've got a bunch of data that's exactly the same. Like I'll give you a real world example. On my website, I have a JSON file that is articles I've written on other websites, right? So my list of like lead dev articles and CSS tricks articles and stuff like that. I have to keep those somewhere and I don't know where to keep them. So I put them in a JSON file and then I have to like import that and then run a loop and build these things. So I can see like a plugin like this would allow me to just import the article as a I just import it and use it as a component and then use esbuild to do the plugin to like parse all that for me, or even like stuff that would be like proprietary things. Like if you need to scan for secrets or something, you could build the parser to look at any of your files and check to see if you like included something that resembles an API key and then fail if you did that. Like there's some really interesting stuff that you could do here that
MDX
you know, I'm sure
is a great example. If you've got an marketing file, an MDX file, and you want to process that, you can't do that with JavaScript, but you can turn it into a JavaScript file by processing it with MDX and spitting out an actual JavaScript file. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what we do in Remix, by the way. We support MDX routes, and we use an esbuild plugin to support those. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah.
Any data type, any shared data like that in some sort of configuration, you can take that and transform it however you need, or just at least read it and then spit it out to your actual JavaScript components. So you don't have to create a whole new component. You can just give the user some data, right? You can turn your YAML into JSON. And then now you have a JSON object you can use. So yeah, there's loads of really cool examples like that.
So I feel like this is a really, really powerful tool to have in your tool belt, especially as we're seeing a lot of the ecosystem starting to migrate to esbuild as a default. If you see something that's using Vite uses esbuild under the hood.
Yes.
So if you're using one of the new like Create X app and it's got Vite powering the build, esbuild is what's under the hood. So if you find yourself needing to like, oh, I wish I could like automate this. I wish I could make this a little bit easier. Esbuild plugins might be the way that you do that. I do think though, this probably ought to come with a bit of a caveat, which is the reason Webpack takes a long time to build is because people run 5 million plugins in Webpack. Webpack itself is not slow, right? So as you start dreaming up ideas for how you could extend esbuild, just bear in mind the trade-offs. Right? Like as you start adding more plugins, you're going to add more work, which means the esbuild is going to slow down. And that bloat is not esbuild's fault, right? Like we got to be careful as we add tools that we're adding tools that add enough value to justify the time.
Sure. And there's a caveat to your caveat, by the way, because
a caveat to the caveat.
Indeed. I would argue you would have to have a whole lot of plugins doing a whole lot of work before you really started. It's not just the number of plugins, it's what the plugins are doing. Remember that the plugins never actually go in and parse your AST, which is where the bulk of a lot of compiler work happens. So even though we are in JavaScript and we're probably going to be running a little slower than the source Go code that's running to actually execute everything. First of all, we've got our filter, which is a really nice escape hash because we're only dealing with these certain type of imports, right? We ignore everything else. So with the filter, we get to really speed things up a lot too by just ignoring things. So, yeah. So like, I'm not saying to go and build a jillion plugins. I'm saying that, you know, we do a fair bit of work in Remix and it's still super fast. So, I mean, that's just how fast esbuild is. So, there's a lot of wiggle room there, but I wouldn't go doing, and you can also use caching, by the way, too. There's a lot of work you can do in esbuild via caching. So setting a cache key, checking a store somewhere if you're doing anything too expensive to make sure that nothing's changed. So there's a lot of things you can do to optimize your plugins as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like somebody asked if this would Minified. Yeah, here it is. Farshid asked, is the code further processed by esbuild? Like, will it be minified and all that? And I just looked at the build to see, and it looks like it certainly would be.
Yeah, there are options. So the esbuild has a bunch of different options for configuration. You can minify the code with esbuild. By default, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But we used a very minimal esbuild configuration. But yeah, you can do that kind of thing. It does a lot of the transforms for you out of the box. I think, don't quote me on this, I think they support like browsers lists and stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about configuring your .env or whatever, or your what did we do back in the day? You had to like install 5 million Babel plugins and then decide individually what future features to support. We don't do that anymore. esbuild just does that. So it's already back. It's going to transform your code back a few years and make sure that other browsers can read it. I'll double check on the
And if you don't want to do that, you can also write a browsers list config, which will, and say like, I only want to support the latest browser. And then you can, you'll do a lot less transpilation then.
Yeah. Again, if they support browsers lists, I think they do. I'm pretty sure.
I feel like I read that. Yeah. Okay. Maybe don't quote us on that, chat, but I'm pretty sure it's in here. But yeah, you can find all those details in here. It's going to be under the API somewhere. But yeah, there's a lot to love about esbuild. It's a very exciting project. I feel like it has been part of a new wave of really exciting stuff going on in the JavaScript ecosystem. Chance, I know you wanted to keep it to an hour today, which means that we are out of time. So where should people go if they want to learn more?
Twitter is a good place. I yap my mouth off on Twitter a fair bit, so you can follow me there. Chance the Dev on Twitter. You can join the Remix Discord channel if you want. Go to remix.run, and there is a link at the bottom to join our Discord channel, I believe. And a lot of good stuff happening there. You can ping me on Discord. If you want to never ever get in touch with me, you can send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll never read it. And yeah, that's about it, I think. Otherwise, just catch me around the internets and try Remix. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Well, let's do one more quick shout out. We've had Amanda here from White Coat Captioning all day doing the live captioning for us. Thank you very much, Amanda. And that's made possible through contributions from our sponsors, Netlify, NX, and Backlight, all making this show what it is today through financial support. So thank you very much for that. While you are on the site, make sure you go and check out the schedule. We've got a lot of really good stuff coming up. We are going to build a dynamic image with Node Canvas, and then I've got more episodes that I haven't put up on the site yet. I apparently need to get them up today because we're just about to the end of the list that's on the website now. But we got more coming.
Busy this week?
It's been a bit of a week, but let's do this as well, chat. Who do you want to see on the show, right? And I'm going to shut this down. So tweet at me. Go tag your favorite creators and tell them you want to see them on the show so that we can get more of these episodes lined up. Also, let me know what you want to learn about because there's a lot going on out there. I love learning new things. It's always fun to see what people are building and innovating on. So please hit me up. Let me know. What do you want to learn? Because I want to learn everything. Got to focus. With that, I think we're going to call this one a success. I had a lot of fun. I feel like I have a much better understanding of how esbuild is working under the hood and what we can do to extend it a bit. Chance, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Do you have any parting words for the chat?
No, the chat was great. I was following along in another tab, watching on Twitch as folks were enjoying dropping the boops on. Yeah, this is a great show. Always love watching it, and it was really awesome to be a part. So thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. All right, chat, stay tuned. We're going to go find somebody to raid. We will see you all next time.
Peace.